In 1942, Stalingrad became the site of one of the most brutal battles in human history. Over 2 million soldiers and civilians were killed, wounded, or went missing. And entire neighborhoods were obliterated under relentless bombardment. The Luftwaffe alone dropped more than 23,000 tons of bombs, while thousands of artillery shells rained down daily, turning streets into rivers of fire and rubble. Factories, homes, and hospitals were destroyed, and the city's infrastructure collapsed under the sheer scale of the assault. Tanks and aircraft were lost in numbers never seen before on a single battlefield. Stalingrad was not just a military confrontation. It became a symbol of total war, where human endurance was tested to the limits and survival itself became a battle. By this point in the war, Hitler had already defeated France and Britain, while the German engulfment of Soviet Russia had reached the gates of Moscow and Leningrad. The ultimate prize in the south was the Volga River, a 3,000-kilometer-long lifeline used to transport arms and reinforcements from Moscow. Hitler knew that by cutting this supply line at Stalingrad, he could seize the oil-rich regions of Chechnya and Azerbaijan, crucial for sustaining his war machine. There was also a psychological goal: capturing a city named after Stalin would shatter the morale of the Russian forces and send a chilling message to the world about the invincibility of the Third Reich. Stalin, however, saw Stalingrad as a sacred ground. Losing it would be unthinkable, both strategically and symbolically. On June 28, 1942, the German Sixth Army, supported by elite panzer tank units, advanced toward the city. Initially consisting of 270,000 men, this force grew to over 1 million, including troops from Italy, Romania, Hungary, and Croatia. Inside the city, Stalin refused to let the 400,000 civilians evacuate. He believed their presence would inspire his soldiers to fight with more fervor. Every person between 16 and 55 was called into service, and anyone who attempted to run was ordered to be shot dead. Factories were converted into fortresses overnight. Workers and soldiers alike tore apart machinery to build barricades, turning the city itself into a weapon. Even children were forced into labor, building safety walls around petrol depots, while women manned anti-aircraft guns, standing their ground as bombs turned the skies black. On August 23rd, the ruination began as the Luftwaffe launched 1,600 air attacks in a single day, dropping 1,000 tons of bombs and reducing entire streets to rubble. In the northwest, 37 anti-aircraft guns manned entirely by women fought advancing tanks for hours before being destroyed. Within a week, an estimated 40,000 civilians were dead, their cries lost amidst the thunder of artillery. Hunger, disease, and relentless fear gnawed at everyone trapped in the ruins. Yet the city refused to fall. By September, the Germans had surrounded the city on 3 sides. To survive the constant air attacks, the Russians adopted a strategy called hugging the Germans. By staying as close as possible to the enemy lines, they ensured German planes could not bomb them without hitting their own troops. The struggle became a rats' war, fought room by room, stairwell by stairwell, and kitchen by kitchen. Control of the railway station changed hands 14 times in just 6 hours. Amidst the rubble, snipers like Vasily Zaitsev became legends, with Zaitsev alone killing 225 Germans. His patience and precision turning him into a specter haunting the German advance. Every corner of the city became a deadly chessboard, where improvisation often meant survival or death. By November, Hitler controlled 90% of the city and celebrated victory prematurely. However, he committed two fatal errors. He moved most of his aircraft to North Africa and left his flanks guarded by under-equipped allies, many of whom were poorly trained and demoralized. As temperatures dropped below -18 degrees Celsius, the German supply lines froze, leaving soldiers without adequate clothing, food, or medical care. Despite his generals' pleas to retreat, Hitler's ego demanded they stay and fight, convinced that surrender would be a personal and ideological failure. The cold became an invisible enemy, claiming more lives than bullets, and the once formidable German army began to crumble under the weight of its own arrogance. On November 19th, the Russians launched Operation Uranus. 1 million Soviet troops crossed the Volga, encircling 300,000 Axis soldiers in just 3 days, turning the besiegers into the besieged. Starvation and the bitter winter took a horrific toll. German soldiers were reduced to eating horses, rats, and even the skins of stray dogs. The Russians used psychological warfare, playing sad songs over loudspeakers, spreading despair, and placing booby-trapped effigies of Hitler in the snow. Every day became a fight, not just against the enemy, but against frostbite, disease, and hopelessness. Communication with the outside world was severed, leaving trapped soldiers isolated and broken. Their morale shattered, even as their training kept them fighting mechanically. On January 31st, 1943, the newly promoted Field Marshal Paulus surrendered at Russian headquarters. Of the 91,000 Germans who went into captivity, only 6,000 would ever return home alive. The Axis powers lost up to 750,000 men, while the Soviet army suffered over 1.1 million casualties, including both soldiers and civilians. The streets of Stalingrad were littered with remnants of war, burned-out tanks, collapsed buildings, and the silent bodies of those who had fought and died for reasons beyond comprehension. The city had endured, but at a cost so staggering it defies imagination. Stalingrad was the decisive turning point of World War II. It broke the German momentum and proved that the Nazi war machine could be stopped. Only 2 years later, the Nazi Empire fell following Hitler's suicide. The battle remains a complex and haunting reminder of the cost of total war, the resilience of ordinary people under extraordinary pressure, and the deadly consequences of ambition, unchecked by reason. Stalingrad is not merely a historical event. It is a testament to the extremes of human suffering, courage, and endurance.